Iwo Jima's black sand didn't just stain boots. It swallowed momentum. It swallowed cover. And in the worst crossfire zones on that island, it swallowed men who were already carrying the weight of war. Most people remember Iwo Jima for one image, but the Marines who fought there remembered the ground itself, because on Iwo, the terrain wasn't background. It was an active threat. The battle ran from February 19 to the 26th of March 1945. 36 days on a volcanic island, barely 10 square miles. And the cost was crushing. Thousands killed, tens of thousands wounded, against a Japanese garrison that largely fought from underground positions. If you're a veteran watching this, you already know what it feels like when the environment becomes the enemy. For everyone else, pay attention, because this is the side of Iwo Jima that movies rarely get right. Let's break down the most feared thing on Iwo Jima, starting with the black sand that turned every step into a fight. The black sand wasn't sand, it was volcanic ash that refused to hold you up. On the landing beaches, the surface wasn't firm. It was soft volcanic ash and grit that gave way under weight and slid back in when you tried to dig. Planners knew the soft volcanic ash would impede vehicles, so Marines and Seabees had to improvise ways to move supplies inland because wheels bogged down, and even simple hauling became a grind. Now layer the human reality onto that. A Marine on Iwo wasn't light. He was carrying weapon, ammo, canteens, packs, tools, grenades, often pushing well over 100 pounds depending on role and load. And on Iwo, that load didn't just tire you out, it drove you down into the ash. Historical analysis of the landing conditions describes the ash sucking over boot tops and forcing Marines to fight for footing while already under fire. Black sand that swallowed US Marines, not literally eating people whole, but functionally doing the next worst thing, pinning men in place while machine guns and mortars worked them over. This is what the island fought back looks like in hard numbers. The battle lasted 36 days. The US landing forces suffered 6,821 killed and 19,217 wounded. The Japanese garrison was roughly 20,000, 21,000 strong, with only a small number surviving to be taken prisoner. Amphibian tractor battalions lost 145 LVTs at Iwo, many not to enemy fire, but to surf and deep water. Those numbers are the frame. Now here's how the black sand helped make them real. On Iwo, the most dangerous places were the places where movement slowed, because slowing down didn't just mean you're tired, it meant the enemy had time to aim. And on Iwo, Japanese defenses weren't built for dramatic charges. They were built for controlled killing. One of the most brutal descriptions from the battle explains the feeling Marines had in exposed sectors. No cover, hidden positions, interlocking fire, and high ground honeycombed, with layered emplacements that could smother any movement. That's what a crossfire zone is, a place where you don't need the enemy to chase you, because the geometry is already set. And now add black sand. Your boots sink, you lunge forward and slide. You drop to fire and the grit gets into everything. You try to crawl, but the ground drags you back like wet powder. And every second you're stuck, you're being bracketed by mortars. A lot of people imagine the landing as they hit the beach, then advanced. But the beach itself was a problem. High surf and dangerous undertow repeatedly disrupted operations, even forcing beach closures at points. And amphibious tractors, LVTs, paid a steep price. The amphibian tractor battalions lost 145 LVTs at Iwo Jima. And notably, Japanese gunfire and mines accounted for less than 20% of that total. A huge portion was the ocean and the conditions. 34 were lost to crushing surf, and 88 sank in deep water. This matters because every LVT that dies offshore is a supply line that never arrives. It's ammo that doesn't reach the line. It's wounded men who don't get evacuated fast enough. It's congestion, more men piling into fewer usable lanes on a beach where the ground already doesn't cooperate. And in a crossfire zone, congestion is blood. Iwo wasn't just defended, it was engineered. Kuribayashi's forces planted irregular rows of anti-tank mines and anti-boat mines along exits from the beaches, then rigged huge makeshift charges using things like aerial bombs and depth charges triggered by pressure mines. But here's the part people don't expect. The loose soil retained enough metallic characteristics that standard mine detectors were unreliable, so engineers had to go forward on hands and knees, probing with bayonets and wooden sticks. Think about what that means under fire. The sand is already unstable. Now your solution is crawling forward, face down, slowly, feeling for death with a blade. That is not a side plot. That is a central reason why the beach to inland transition was so punishing. Iwo's northern terrain is repeatedly described as a defender's dream. Broken, convoluted, cave-dotted, a jungle of stone, and more than one Marine compared the island to something out of Dante's Inferno. Kuribayashi's defensive policy mattered here. He moved away from the simplistic water's edge model and the suicidal bonsai pattern seen in other battles, building a defense designed to absorb bombardment and keep fighting. That's how you get the nightmare Iwo became. Bombardment doesn't end the fight, because much of the garrison is holed up underground, and the bombardment's craters can even become useful cover while slowing the attacker. U.S. Department of War. So Marines advance through ash and broken stone. They take a position and the enemy isn't gone. He's simply not visible yet. Here's one of the most Iwo problems imaginable. It rains harder. A Marine hits the deck in the grip, rolls, tries to return fire, and discovers the loose volcanic grit combined with rain is jamming weapons. That's not a minor inconvenience. That's existential. Your rifle is your life. And on Iwo, even the ground tried to take that away. This is why the black sand belongs in the title, because it wasn't just about being slow, it was about being compromised. At the exact moment you needed reliability, on the open runways and exposed approaches, Marines took heavy casualties from time-fused airbursts fired by Japanese guns zeroed along the ground. And mortar fire could come from multiple directions, raining down across movement corridors where the ash offered no real protection. So the crossfire zones weren't theoretical. They were mapped by the defenders, and every time the ash slowed a Marine, those zones did what they were designed to do. Even when you weren't advancing, you weren't safe. Units spent nights repelling determined counterattacks and engaging infiltrators, with vicious close combat and significant casualties, further exhausting already depleted rifle companies. That matters because exhaustion changes everything. Reaction time, judgment, trigger discipline. And on Iwo, where the enemy was rarely visible, the psychological load was relentless. Bringing it back, why the black sand was the most feared thing. Because it touched everything. It made movement slower. It made digging harder. It made vehicles bog down. It amplified congestion under fire. It complicated mine clearing. It got into weapons. And in crossfire zones, time is what kills you. Iwo Jima wasn't just a battle against Japanese defenders. It was a battle against a volcanic island that refused to behave like ground. And Marines paid for every yard for 36 days until the island was declared secured, after weeks of fighting that did not stop when the first objectives were taken. If you found this valuable, please give a like and share it. Subscribe for more reality-based Pacific War content, and check the description for sources. Everything discussed here is documented in Marine Corps historical publications and reputable World War II archives. Thank you for watching.